Here are a few of the greediest scammers. Number 3. Australian tax fraud. Anthony Dickson and Michael Issakidis learned that lesson the hard way. These business partners secretly operated one of the largest tax fraud schemes in Australian history for 6 years. By the time authorities caught up with them, they'd avoided paying nearly $135 million in taxes. But how was it possible for these millionaire fraudsters to pull off such a large-scale heist? And how did they go undetected by the government for so many years? In the secret world of corporate crime, the answer is a complex web of bogus companies, fake identities, and offshore bank accounts. On March 9, 2006, Dickson and Issakidis created a company called Neumedix Health Australasia. Using this company, the two sought out inventors with ideas for new medical products and offered these inventors thousands of dollars in funding for clinical trials. But there was a catch. If they wanted the money, the inventors had to give away their intellectual property rights to another company called Athena. Why? Because Athena, an offshore company based in the Cayman Islands, was also owned by Dickson and Issakidis. After an inventor signed the rights away to Athena, the scammers then sold the rights to Neumedix, aka themselves, for a price way over its true value. Then Dickson and Issakidis fired the inventor whose idea they bought, allowing the pair to claim they suffered millions of dollars in losses on medical ideas that hadn't worked out. But what was the point of fabricating all those fake losses? As it turned out, Neumedix was also used as a legitimate business by Dickson and Issakidis. The company earned hundreds of millions of dollars each year through various buying and leasing agreements. Normally, all that income would be subject to taxation. By using their fake losses from the failed medical ideas, Dickson and Issakidis claimed they were making much less money than they actually were. They kept $450 million hidden from the government, allowing them to dodge $135 million in taxes. With all that extra money, these two fraudsters lived in the kind of luxury most of us only dream about. Dickson purchased a waterfront mansion for $4.6 million and lived there with his third wife, 28-year-old Slovakian woman named Dagmar Maxianova. Meanwhile, Issakidis bought a $3.8 million waterfront property where he lived with his wife, Dagmar. Both men also spent lavishly on cars, yachts, and other properties. Dickson bought a $1.1 million Rolls-Royce Phantom and Rolls-Royce Ghost engraved with custom license plates, a $1 million Riviera sports yacht, and a $10 million shopping center. Issakidis used his money to buy a Bentley, a Rolls-Royce, private jet rides, and luxurious vacations with his wife. Greed always catches up with you eventually. Authorities noticed the unusual nature of Neumedix's finances, and eventually, the Australian Taxation Office launched an official review. After that, the tax fraud scam went up in flames. In May of 2012, the two men were arrested and charged with tax fraud and money laundering. Both men were found guilty. Issakidis was sentenced to 10 years in jail in 2018, while Dickson was sentenced to 14 in 2015. Meanwhile, as her husband waited out his time in jail, Dagmar Issakidis didn't want to move out of her $3.8 million mansion, despite the home being legally forfeited to the Australian government after Issakidis landed in jail. In December of 2020, the government filed an action to evict the fraudster's wife from the house so that they could seize the property and auction it off. Mrs. Issakidis tried to fight the government's effort, but was eventually kicked out in July of 2021. Number 2. The Bushfire. The worst scammers steal from people in need, especially during Australian bushfires and the COVID pandemic. Tiffany-Anne Brislane-Brown is that kind of scammer. Between 2019 and 2020, Australia experienced a period of severe bushfires that burnt an estimated 60 to 84 million acres of land. While bushfires aren't uncommon in Australia, this particular outbreak was terrible regarding its intensity and duration, eventually leading to the destruction of over 5,900 buildings, 34 casualties. Couple this situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, which broke out in early 2020, and things weren't great for many Australian families and businesses. To help combat some of this economic insecurity, the Aussie government established a program where struggling small businesses could apply for and receive money from the government. similar to the PPP loans in the US. While the program legitimately helped many needy Australians, some saw the money as a means to enrich themselves and cheat the system. Brislane-Brown was then a 23-year-old woman who lived in the city of Newcastle in New South Wales, Australia. For 2 months, Brislane-Brown shamelessly used this bushfire relief program to scam the government out of $60,000. To get the money, she falsely claimed she owned several struggling small businesses and applied for 24 separate program grants using a variety of bank accounts and phone numbers to cover her tracks. Eventually, the police caught up with Miss Brown, but it wasn't her scam that made her go viral, rather her mugshot. When Newcastle police issued a warrant for her arrest, they also posted a notice on Facebook hoping that someone could locate Brislane-Brown. In the post, the police included a 2015 mugshot of Brown with a confused look on her face, messy hair, and a tattoo on her collarbone that reads, "We don't remember days, we remember moments." Clearly, this wasn't Brislane-Brown's first run-in with the law. In 2015, she got arrested for an unknown charge, leading to the mugshot that, 5 years later, caused quite the stir. The unflattering mugshot led to jokes about her messy appearance all over social media. This eventually led Brown to post her own comment while a warrant was out for her arrest, which read, quote, "Loving the photo taken how many years ago? Let's calm down on the comments, guys. It's not every day I look like trailer trash. Let's just say it wasn't a good angle, shall we?" The police then fired back with their own comment, quote, "Probably time you walk into a police station before we find you." Brislane-Brown also felt the need to post a more flattering picture of herself to her personal Facebook page, captioning it, "Here's an actual pic of me. Let's take the time to acknowledge this is not my current Newcastle police page photo." Unflattering mugshots aside, Brislane-Brown still had to pay the piper. She eventually pled guilty to 6 counts of dishonestly obtaining a financial advantage in September of 2020. She was sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in jail, becoming the first person in Australia to be jailed over bushfire relief fraud. She was also ordered to pay back the $60,000 she scammed from the program. Number 1. Way of life. On the surface, Jade Killen was your average family-devoted suburban mother. She was a 33-year-old mother of 3 living in Unanderra, a family-friendly suburb outside of the city of Wollongong. However, her home life wasn't completely normal, as her husband was in jail for armed robbery. Still, on social media and in real life, Killen effortlessly played the part of your typical caring mother of 3, but underneath that bright, cheery exterior was a darker side. The truth was, Killen made her living running a high-end identity theft operation, all from the comfort of her home. So, how did she do it? Killen ran a complex operation. Throughout her criminal career, Killen stole the identities of 786 people and used their information for her own enrichment. She applied for loans and lines of credit in her victims' names to buy and resell the latest Apple products. Police say she used her stolen identities to receive tens of thousands of dollars worth of loans she applied for with stolen identities. When police searched her home, they found bank cards with different names, blank driver's licenses, and 14 databases with the private information of countless Australians. Killen was extremely devoted to her life of crime too. On a mirror in her home, she wrote an incriminating phrase in red lipstick saying, quote, "Fraud is not a crime, it's a way of life." Police also actually found a daily schedule for her criminal activities written above her bed. The schedule included reminders such as apply for 5 loans using different names, complete any research on new companies and credit options for Sunday, and place 5 orders with different names with all carriers for Tuesday. Apparently, devoting yourself to a life of crime means having to work on the weekends. Just how dumb can criminals get with keeping evidence around? Sadly, many of her victims were blind to Killen's scam. One such victim was a man named Zach Aarons. Killen attempted to use Aarons' personal information to take out a $40,000 loan in his name from a lending company called Now Finance. Luckily for Aarons, Now Finance asked Killen for more identification before they gave out the loan, a request which led Killen to withdraw her application. Still, it wasn't all good news for Aarons. He wasn't aware that his personal information was compromised until he got a phone call from the Lake Illawarra police. Aarons' credit report also took a nosedive, and he's had difficulty taking out loans, real loans that he needs to buy property. So how did Killen's complicated identity theft operation finally get busted? Two main incidents led to her downfall. The first occurred when Killen used a fake medical certificate to get out of community service she'd been assigned after being charged with drug possession. Staff at the corrections office noticed that the certificate looked odd and alerted the police. But the final nail in the coffin for Killen came after she attempted to buy an elaborate card printer that was worth $11,000. Normally, these printers were for banks and government offices, but Killen told the printer company she needed the machine for a local bowling club. Suspicious of the order, a representative from the printer company called the bowling club and discovered that no one named Killen even worked there. The company then notified the police, who tracked Killen down because she used her real address to place the printer order. Killen was arrested and pleaded guilty to 33 charges of fraud and dishonesty. While this wasn't how Killen imagined her story would end, she ultimately got to be closer to her husband, behind bars. Click to watch one of these next videos. And let us know in the comments section what's the dumbest thing you've seen someone do in real life.